So much is going on all around the world. And as we all know, the US elections are coming up. And yesterday, we saw Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Now, let me start off by saying this. I appreciate America for getting their presidents to actually go out and debate. Can you imagine in South Africa if we had Cyril Ramaphosa debating Jacob Zuma? Can you imagine how people would be well informed, and also the fact that they're actually able to ask them questions? I mean, this is what we need when we talk about democracy, because what it essentially means, it means that there is no hiding. Everything is out in the public. The voters can be informed and people can watch, and boy, was it something. I mean, the headlines coming out, the first one here says 5 takeaways from striking Biden-Trump presidential debate. And people are basically saying that Biden has a bad start, that he's not going to do very well. And as you can see, it was hosted by CNN, their presidential debate. And for me, really, I watched some snippets out of it. And a lot of clashing happened, a lot of fighting happened, a lot of arguing happened.
Terry, your biggest takeaway from the night?
The American people have a sense of who are the leaders that they are going to vote for. Now, people are saying the Biden team spins his performance, and people are saying Trump mostly keeps his cool. And I mean, what are some of your thoughts? Did you watch the debate? What did you think about it? And then this article says, who could replace Joe Biden? Here are 6 possibilities. Now, a lot of people are saying they must replace Joe Biden because he's too old and he's not doing well. Now, here's my argument. I think that if we're all agreeing that as human beings we're living up to 120, 130, 100 years old maximum, I think your peak years are not going to be in your 70s or your 80s. So I don't think that a leader of a country should be as old and as frail as Joe Biden. But this is my argument, especially when it comes to South Africa. South Africa has majority young people. The median age in this country is extremely young. I think it's about 26. The leadership of the country must reflect the population of the country. And I don't think Joe Biden reflects the population of the US. And also the way that you can see that it's like he's being forced to do this. It's like his funders or somebody's forcing him to do this. He's too old. He was forgetting his lines. He was too frail in the debate. And we see this happening all around the world. And this is why we must be careful of these globalists. This elite class called the deep state. Because people have always wanted to say, does the deep state exist? Who is the deep state? Is it all a lie? Is it the truth? What does it all mean? And here's my thing. A lot of people would like to think that who they vote for, that person goes out and they become the president and they do everything right and they help them get all their dreams and everything else, which is not quite true. There is something called the deep state. And what is this deep state? The deep state are a class or group of people who run governments. And they try and make sure that the public is not aware that they are running government. So I believe that the deep state is behind Joe Biden trying to do what he's doing. Because
if you want to restore
at this age,
law and order in this country,
he's too old.
If you want to defeat the deep state, vote Trump.
Deep state, a group of people that come together, that control governments, yet they were never elected.
Hey, Haji.
I'm having a really hard time wrapping my head around this story, I must admit.
In this concept
documentary,
of deep state has been so, I think, poisoned by politics and Trump sort of using it for everything that he doesn't like. And it kind of makes it hard to approach it earnestly. But I think we have to keep digging. Like, think there's something here.
Is the deep state real?
Is the deep state real?
Is the deep state real? And really, what Trump keeps saying is that Joe Biden is in this because of the deep state. A group of people that run and control the country, that are not elected officials. They are forcing him to continue because they have interests and they have deals that they want him to finish. And this is Trump saying this. And when you really look into this concept, you begin to understand that what many economies experience all around the world is all the same. Because in South Africa, our deep state, we don't call them deep state, but we call them Stellenbosch Mafia. So the same thing you see is going on all around the world. And this is why it's important for us to be aware of these things and share this information. And that's why I want you to share this with as many people as possible so that people understand that when they're voting, they should not be voting for somebody who is controlled. Now, there are a lot of articles coming out here that says who could replace Joe Biden. Here are some 6 possibilities. So now apparently the Democrats are looking for people to replace Joe Biden because he didn't do well in last night's debate. Joe Biden won the Democratic primaries earlier this year, but does not officially become the party's candidate for president until endorsed at a 2024 Democratic National Convention in Chicago, which takes place on the 19th of August. Now, people are saying that people in the party want Donald Trump to be replaced. But here's my concern. If you're going to replace the person you're replacing in your party, ensure that you're also replacing the clutches or the hold of the deep state. So people are saying, is Kamala Harris coming? Gavin Newsom coming? JB coming? And really, if I'm being honest, I haven't really paid much attention to any of these politicians. I think the person who should have been running the United States of America is Vivek Ramaswamy, although I do have some differences with him, but that's who I think. But I want to play some clips from last night's debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Take a listen to this.
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Then, when he wanted to make his point about abortion, he just repeated the word period 3 times.
But we are not for late-term abortion, period, period, period.
Very strong, Joe Biden. Well done.
There you have it. So there has been a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of errors that Joe Biden has been doing throughout the debate. And a lot of people are saying he was heavily medicated. The US government is saying that he had a cold and they basically blaming it on that. But a lot of people are really concerned. And I think this is what I want to say. I think what they have in America, where they allow candidates to debate one another, is what we need in African countries. Because in Africa, the president of these political parties only get interviewed by people that they want in their political party. They never get questioned by outside people. They never go against their opponents. They never debate publicly. And here's the thing. If you cannot put 2 ideas before people that are going to vote and let them decide what they want, the issue of that is that you end up fooling those that you only present one idea to. And they end up choosing the lesser idea. And this is what I want to commend out of the US. The fact that political candidates are able to come publicly, debate one another, and even ask each other questions, which I think is very, very important. And we should be seeing more and more of this in our country. So I'm saying kudos, and I'm saying let's see this more in African countries. Joe Biden is heavily drugged because they want him to actually do this. And I think this is the part about the deep state that we all have to be careful about. The fact that the deep state will go as far as creating somebody who they want to take over government, and they will do everything to make sure that that person continues to do whatever that they want to do without being questioned or without people actually being aware of what is going on. So I think there's some interesting information. Talking about the deep state, I want you to watch this documentary because there's a part that I want you to see where it stems from and how it continues to operate, because these things are real and they must be discussed.
Have to be behind this. And so they start infiltrating the anti-war movement, and they come back in about a year and they say, well, Moscow and the North Vietnamese, they really like this anti-war movement, but it's not controlled by them. It's not funded by them. It's pretty much an American thing, But that doesn't change anything. And chaos continues to grow. And eventually, by 1970, there's 30 officers working on it, hundreds of agents. And, the ostensible purpose of chaos, to detect a foreign hand, chaos was in existence for 7 years. Every time they were asked to report on it, they came back and said, it's not foreign controlled and it's not foreign funded, which was obvious to anybody who was involved in the anti-war movement. There were a lot of people inside the CIA saying, we're spying on our wives and kids, basically. They're going to the demonstrations and we're reading the reports at night. We shouldn't be doing this.
Are we trying to exterminate an entire people? What have we become as a nation?
Americans were waking up to the fact that these unelected men were wielding way too much power and spying not only on the entire world, but on Americans themselves.
Unelected men wielding too much power, spying even on Americans themselves. Intelligence, they control it all. And really, it is time that we all wake up and realize that the deep state is a real thing. And in South Africa, we all know it as Stellenbosch Mafia, but these are real things. People that control governments from outside governments and make politicians say things that don't make sense, or because they are in the controlling seat. And this brings me very nicely into my next point, which is South Africa. Right now, we have a government that is non-existent. Now, after each election in South Africa held on the 29th of May, there is supposed to be a government that comes in, a president, and that president is supposed to come in with his cabinet that they're able to actually deliver services towards the people. Right now, we don't have a cabinet. Right now, we only have a president. That means the time, the effort to run and implement things in government from a ministerial point of view, that time is being lost. And who do we have to thank for that? GNU. Now, this brings me beautifully to my point to say in America, they talk about the deep state. They talked about how they control the CAI. They talk about who they want to be the president. They talk about control. In South Africa, we don't necessarily call them the deep state, but we call them Stellenbosch Mafia. We know who they are that control and do the way that they do things. And I think the reason why we're not seeing a new cabinet is because there is infighting within the Stellenbosch Mafia. That's where the issue is. It's not about the DA or the ANC. It's about the fact that there are people, Stellenbosch Mafia, that are trying to control Cyril Ramaphosa. And for us as a country, we need to be aware of these things and interrogate them. So GNU talks hit yet another deadlock as ANC's revised cabinet offer rifles the DA. In the last development in South Africa political landscape, the ANC and the DA have yet to reconcile their differences over cabinet positions in emerging government of national unity. The DA has called a special federal executive meeting for Thursday to deliberate the latest developments. This comes after the ANC and DA have yet to reconcile their differences. So there seem to be a lot of differences between the two. And this is what I said from the beginning to say, how are two political parties that stand for different ideas, that stand for different principles, coming together to be one? And you want us to all believe that it is a government of national unity. No, it's a coalition. And let it be called that. Now, tensions within the DA because the South African Communist Party, an ANC alliance partner, accused the DA on Wednesday of trying to overshadow the ANC. This came after a leaked letter from Helen Zille, the DA's federal chairperson, was made public. For me, I already said from the beginning to say the DA does not have as many votes or received as many votes as the ANC. The ANC should be running, if we're talking about democracy, these talks. But from where we stand and what we've been hearing, it seemed like the DA is actually running them. Now, a lot of different things are happening, but let's talk about a couple of things which I think are quite important. The ANC is continuing to engage with Umkhonto weSizwe and the EFF. However, a deal with the EFF appears unlikely, as evidenced by leader Julius Malema's recent social media post in which he disparaged Mbalula by referring to him as Nelson Ramudika, a derogatory comparison to a former apartheid-era figure. The DA national spokesperson, Solly, declined to comment on the latest developments, but said the party remains committed to the statement of intent to set up a GNU. Now, what we are hearing, and this is coming out from a lot of people's mouths, is that the ANC leaders are meeting the MK party. I want to know from you, what do you expect to come out of that meeting? What are the results that you want to hear from that meeting? Would you accept an ANC and MK coalition? They would be a majority. They wouldn't need anybody else. What does that look like? Now, we already know that the MK has said, if we're going to do anything with the ANC, we're going to do something with the ANC, but without Ramaphosa. Because according to the MK party, Ramaphosa is the deep state. He is the mouthpiece of Stellenbosch Mafia. So that's the reason why they're saying we don't want to do anything with the ANC of Ramaphosa. So if the ANC removes Ramaphosa, does that mean we'll see an MK ANC coalition? Who then will become the president of the country? Oh, another thing they're asking for is a presidential pardon, of course. Who then becomes the president of the country? And what direction does South Africa take? What's the shape of our country? Now, I'll let you know one thing. The deep state is fighting as hard as they can to ensure that this never happens. Stellenbosch Mafia, let me call them Stellenbosch Mafia, because let's start renaming them, is fighting to make sure that this does not see the light of day. How do we as the people feel about this? What can we do? Is there anything that we should be doing to try and do this? Now, a couple of things have transpired, because we all know the deep state rules with their money. And the fact that people heard that, the DA and ANC coalition is not doing well, the South African rand drops. So the rand is dropping. And Ramaphosa's ANC and the DA emerged as the two largest parties in the unity government after the ANC lost its parliamentary majority in an election last month. Yet they are struggling to come to agreements. And I don't want to get into much as to, what's going on, what cabinet post this one is fighting for, because we all know it's a fight for power, it's a fight for resources, it's a fight for cabinets. We all know that, right? As the cabinet announcement continues to delay, the rand experiences more losses. Now, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange Top 40 Index was also down by 0.5% because of this. So it comes back to the previous video that I did to say, is the rand racist? Does the rand dictate how South Africans should be ruling in their country? And we're also seeing international markets saying South African rand drops on reported discord over cabinet posts. So there seems to be a lot of arguments about which minister should take this, who should do this, who should be deputy president, what should actually happen. And I want to know from you in the comment section, what are your thoughts? I don't just want to speak to you. I also want to hear what are your thoughts. Now, there is another possibility, which I think would be very interesting. If all the other parties would come together and get the ANC out of government. So Julius Malema and the DA, and don't say that won't happen, because Julius Malema and the DA have worked together in municipalities. They all come together. They'll win about 50-something%, close to 60%. They have the majority. And the ANC comes out of power. What would that look like? Would people still betray or feel betrayed by MK? If Helen Zille had to say, we'll give President Jacob Zuma presidential pardon, we will also make him president, John Steenhuisen maybe will be deputy, how would you feel about that? Is that a possibility? And this is the point I'm trying to get home, to say it's difficult for us to speak about this thing because the deep state or Stellenbosch Mafia, they are in control. Because if the politicians themselves were in control, these conversations would be easy because they would ask their voters. Their voters would have already told them what they should do, and they would go ahead and continue. I mean, there's so many solutions that can come out. But when you're being controlled, it becomes too difficult to be able to do something like this. Now, I want to talk about the victory of Kenya. And I want to salute every single young person in Kenya. You fought a good fight. Well done. Congratulations.
Having reflected on the continuing conversation around the content of the Finance Bill 2024 and listening keenly to the people of Kenya who have said loudly that they want nothing to do with this Finance Bill 2024, I concede, and therefore I will not sign the 2024 finance bill, and it shall subsequently be withdrawn. And I have agreed with these members that that becomes our collective position.
There you have it. He had to come out and address the young people of Kenya and say that he concedes. Now, this is proof that if we stand as a collective, we can defeat the deep state. Because what is going on in Kenya, if you haven't noticed, is the fact that the IMF, the World Bank, all these international deep state-owned companies that want to give loans to Africa and ask for hectic interest rates, and hence Africans continue taxing their employees and the people that work and function within their countries much, much more to pay back the deep state. The people of Kenya said, no, we will simply not pay back the deep state. And this is my point. 2024 is the year where Africa must redeem itself from the deep state, from white monopoly capital, from Stellenbosch mafia, and the power must come back to the people. If we, the people, like what happened in Kenya, if we stand up against the forces of the deep state, we can conquer them. It is possible. It can be done. And that's why I want each and every one of you to share this video with as many people as possible, because I believe that it's possible. It's very possible for us to be able to defeat the deep state. Do you know where the problem is? The problem for many of these areas is that the people tend to allow themselves to be divided. And when division happens amongst the people, that's where the deep state enters and controls. And that's why I loved what Kenya did. Everybody was together. Everybody stood together to say, this time around, we will not be divided. The deep state will be defeated. So I want each and every one of us to take this. Now, how did this deep state
Spying
start?
and lying and cheating and deceiving and sneaking and breaking, coercing, dividing and conquering. No idea was too crazy for the OSS during this time. Like, one OSS psychologist had this idea that Hitler could be demoralized if they just showed him a vast quantity of porn.
Paramilitary operations.
Strapping explosives to a bunch of bats and letting them loose over Tokyo.
Guys skiing into Nazi-occupied Norway.
Making fake companies, recruiting off Wall Street from all of his old colleagues, bringing in bankers and movie directors, fake radio stations, anything to demoralize, divide, or confuse the enemy.
The OSS is the first intelligence agency that...
They're describing the deep state as anything to demoralize, confuse, and disassemble the enemy.
The United States ever has.
Oh, and one of Wild Bill's favorite things to do was to have parties at his house.
Hi! Are we the first ones here?
It's the big night.
To plan and plot his operations with his friends in Georgetown, a neighborhood in Washington, D.C. that is strikingly beautiful. Here is Bill Donovan's house. It's now worth $17 million. It's beautiful, and this is where he would have a drink and chat with other Washington power brokers. He would recruit new agents from American high society, earning the agency the nickname Oh So Social. Pretty clever. Okay, but remember that spy agencies like this were a war thing only, and the war ended in 1945, and the OSS got dissolved.
The forces of Germany have surrendered to the United Nations.
What do we do with the OSS now that we're at peace?
And really what I'm trying to drive home is the fact that it is only the people that can force their political parties to do what they want them to do. And we cannot sit down and watch politicians decide based on the votes. If you voted for a political party, you have the right to let that political party know this is the coalition that we want. And that's what Kenya did. They didn't wait for them to be told. No, they told their people that this is what we want. I mean, questions, ANC, you don't even have a single bus outside of Lituli House saying what you want. You're watching it on Twitter and you're just commenting. So I'm talking to people who voted for the ANC, because some of us voted for Right South Africa, so we can't comment on people that we didn't vote for. But what I am saying is that the people need to rise and the people need to have a voice. And the first objective of the people must be to stand against what the deep state stands for. And that becomes very important. So I'm going to leave it here, but I want you to make sure that you are subscribed. Majority of you are not subscribed. And you don't help the channel grow if you're not subscribed. So please subscribe, leave a comment, and like this video because you help us grow immensely when you do that. And I'm going to make sure that I keep giving you the right information that you can open up your mind and understand how politics works, how you should be voting, and how you should be involved in politics. You should not be sitting on the sideline. No, you should be involved because if you don't get involved, the deep state will, and the deep state will control you.